You're listening to The Luxury Item, the podcast on the business of luxury and the people and companies that are shaping the future of the luxury industry. Here's your host, Scott Kerr.
Joseph Phelps Vineyards is one of the most respected and acclaimed wine properties in California, and in particular the Napa Valley. When Joseph Phelps purchased a former cattle ranch near St. Helena in California's Napa Valley in 1973, he began a tradition of winemaking craftsmanship that continues to influence the industry. Today, the winery produces esteemed estate-based labels from its more than 500 acres of vines in 11 vineyards, each strategically chosen over the decades, that stretches from the Napa Valley and the western Sonoma coast. In 2022, Joseph Phelps Vineyards was acquired by the luxury wines and spirits division of LVMH, Moët Hennessy, which is closely collaborating with the winery to introduce Joseph Phelps to a global audience. My guest on the luxury item is David Pearson, President and Executive Chairman at Joseph Phelps Vineyards. With an illustrious career in luxury wine spanning over 20 years, David is renowned for his visionary leadership and for playing an important role in the development of luxury wines coming from the Napa Valley. Since joining Joseph Phelps as President and Executive Chairman in 2023, his wealth of experience and expertise has been leading Joseph Phelps Vineyards into the next phase of growth. Welcome to the luxury item, David.
Thank you. Very happy to be here.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining me. So Joseph Phelps Vineyard is a Napa Valley wine icon. It was established in 1973 at the cusp of a second golden era of winemaking, the first being post-Prohibition. And unlike many of those 1970s pioneering estates, Joseph Phelps remained a family-owned business for a long time. What was Joseph Phelps' vision for his winery, and why was it unique at the time?
Thanks. So happy to be here. Thanks for that opening question. It's a great story. Joe Phelps, I think, to me is a really American story in the sense that he was born in the late 20s, 1927, I believe, and grew up through the Depression. And through the Depression years, his early years, he had lots of entrepreneurial activities that sort of built up in him this innovation and this visionary way of creating business and creating value. In the 1950s, he inherited his father's construction business, Hansel Phelps, and building it out of Colorado, grew it into a nationwide success and an enormously important and successful construction business. And in the 1960s, he opened an office in San Francisco, was commissioned to build two wineries, one in Napa Valley, the Souverain winery that is now Rutherford Hill, and in Geyserville and Healdsburg, the Francis Coppola property, which now is owned by Delicato. Anyway, he was building those two wineries, and in those years he was vacationing in Italy and France, and he really became determined to create his own winery, to build his own winery. And so he did come back to Napa, and with the help of people like Joe Heitz and Robert Mondavi and others, he found a beautiful property in St. Helena, a place called Spring Valley, 640-acre property that at the time had only cows on it. And he purchased the property in 72 and in 73, constructed the initial winery, and by 74 was selling wines. His vision from the very first came from his experiences in the construction company. He was actually working in both for a number of time until the early 80s, when he left finally his work with a construction company and focused entirely on the winery. But his vision was to strive constantly for the very highest quality possible. He was insatiable. He was curious and constantly craving new skills. He loved to learn. He loved to grow, and I think most importantly, he loved to share, because I think the wine business is about sharing, not only amongst wine growers and winemakers, but certainly with wine and at a table with food. And he understood that passion from the first. So, with his very first wines in 1973, he produced a Johannesburg Riesling. And a wine writer named Robert Balzer, who's passed away now, wrote about that particular Riesling and said, and I haven't tried it, but we'll take Robert's word for it. He said that it was the finest Riesling he'd ever tried from anywhere in the world, which is amazing. His first, Joe's first winemaker was a German gentleman named Walter Schug. So that may explain the expertise behind it. But by 1974, the next year, Joe innovated, created one of the most important innovations in Napa Valley by creating the wine Insignia. And that has become an iconic wine through the years. So his vision was from the first to produce the very best, always striving to continue to do so, and was all about sharing and the passion of wine.
And the winery offers a range of wines, including Cabernet Sauvignon, Syrah, Sauvignon Blanc, and wines from your Sonoma Coast vineyards. However, the crown jewel in the Phelps portfolio, which you just referred to, has long been its Insignia wine, which debuted in 1974. It was California's first proprietary red Bordeaux-style blend that has steadily held its place among the top wines produced in Napa. It's won numerous awards throughout the years and has developed really this kind of cult following. Why has the flagship Insignia wine become a status symbol in some circles and one of the most talked about wines in the region?
Yeah, well, I mean, you touched on it. It's a combination of the early innovation and the consistent drive for quality expression over now more than 50 years. And I think that it's longevity, consistency, and original inspiration. There's a quote that we have from Robert Mondavi, who said something along the lines that we, meaning they, were at the time purists. They were focusing on Cabernet Sauvignon and Pinot Noir. And Joe came in 1974 and created the wine Insignia, which was the first proprietary name of a blended wine. Robert Mondavi, the same quote, also recognized that Joe was the first person to produce a Rhone-inspired Syrah labeled wine. The very first Syrah in California came from Joe Phelps. But Insignia was the launch point for what became a model for Napa Valley, blending Bordeaux varietals and then creating recognition with consumers that wine was going to be and would always be the finest wine that Joe produced year after year. And the test of time for wine is everything, right? We can imagine making a great wine for 5 years or 10 years or 15 years. If it then goes away, it was interesting for time being, but it doesn't become iconic. I mean, the test of wines truly is the test of time. So Insignia has started well on its way in terms of passing that test.
And it's become such a core part of Joseph Phelps' portfolio and has made a huge impact in the marketplace. But does it ever overshadow the Joseph Phelps brand where people think Insignia is a standalone brand?
Yeah, it's a really good question. It's something that we manage and look to for communications. I don't believe so, because the umbrella of Joseph Phelps is the umbrella of quality, striving for quality, innovation, and uniqueness. So that we make wines in Sonoma, we make different wines in Napa Valley, but each of those wines has its place and its consumer, and they, I think, work together to reinforce Joseph Phelps' recognition and its history. But it doesn't. I don't think they confuse with each other.
And what are some of the other offerings that Phelps has, and how does it fit into the larger brand story?
Yeah, as we said, so Joseph Phelps started in 73, and the first wines came out in 73 and 74. And through the decades, the 70s, 80s, 90s, even into the 2000s, Joseph Phelps continued to acquire more vineyards. And so today, we own and farm 8 vineyards that are exceptional vineyards that run the length of Napa Valley from St. Helena all the way down to the Napa itself. So we have a vineyard in Rutherford, and we have one in Oakville, we have 2 in Stag's Leap, and 2 in Oak Knoll, and 1 down in Napa. And so with those wines, we make Insignia as a monolithic, iconic wine. We make a line of Joseph Phelps varietal wines. So the Joseph Phelps varietal wines include a Cabernet Sauvignon, includes a Syrah, still includes a Viognier and a Sauvignon Blanc, and that's a line of wines with a unique label. And then in the late 1990s, 1999 in particular, Joe set his sights on producing, we hope to be with some of the best Pinot Noir and Chardonnay possible. And again, he was out in front quite a bit. He went over to the Sonoma coast and he found 200 acres of property near Occidental in the small little town called Freestone, and planted 100 acres of Chardonnay and Pinot Noir in Freestone, built a winery in 2007. And so today we're offering small production, extremely high quality Pinot Noir and Chardonnay from the Freestone winery. So we have Insignia, we have the varietal wines of Joseph Phelps, we have Freestone in Sonoma, and then there's one last one, which is our cult wine called Bacchus. Bacchus is a very special vineyard in Oakville, planted in 1973 by a gentleman named David Bacchus. So it's not the wine god. He was a very special person, but he was not the wine god. David and Marion Bacchus planted the vineyards in 73. And Joe Phelps and Joseph Phelps Vineyards have been the only people to ever have access and use those grapes. The vineyard was purchased by Joseph Phelps in 93, I believe is the right year. And from that very special vineyard, we make a small quantity of wine called Bacchus, which is like a cult wine for us. It's a kind of a Napa Valley monopole because we're the only one that are having access to those grapes. So that's the what we refer to as the family of the Joseph Phelps family of wines. There's Insignia, the Joseph Phelps wines, Freestone, and Bacchus.
In 2022, the Phelps brand and its attendant 525 acres of land in both Napa and Sonoma was acquired by the luxury wines and spirits division of LVMH, Moët Hennessy. Why did Joseph Phelps decide to sell to LVMH?
Yeah, it's a really important question. I have always thought, and I believe in that, true winemakers, people who understand the soul and the passion of winemaking, and people who have created vineyards and made wines, their primary interest, their primary dream is that those vineyards and those wines should endure for generations, that their children and their grandchildren should be able to continue to nurture, grow grapes, make wines from those vineyards. And Joe Phelps and his family were certainly true winemakers at heart and in soul. And we know that in the wine business, the most perilous, most difficult maneuver to achieve is the transition, either from generation to generation. And I understand, I wasn't in the family meetings in the early 2020s, but I understand that the family was thinking along those lines. What do we do that will be the best at preserving, nurturing, and growing all that the Phelps family had created over the last 50 plus years? And they decided that they needed a partner that would be able to do just that, and then transition, sell the property to them. So there was a number of discussions that they had with different possible suitors, as it were. And they decided in September 2022 that LVMH, Moët Hennessy, was the right partner, the right family to take charge of that winery. And indeed, not just to hand it to them and be done with it, but to hand it to them and then hope and look and expect that we would grow into the future.
So from looking from the other side, why did Moët Hennessy feel that Joseph Phelps Vineyards was the right fit for its global wine portfolio? For one, it allows Moët Hennessy to have a bigger presence in Napa. It already had a stake in a couple of other Napa vineyards, but it also allows Moët Hennessy to significantly scale its U.S. wine business. So where was the brand DNA fit?
Yeah, I think that all of those things are absolutely true. To me, the inspiration behind this is that Moët Hennessy is aspiring to be increasingly recognized as a purveyor of some of the world's finest wines. So it was less of a business strategical decision to fill a niche and a gap and find sort of market success. All of that matters, but more of an inspiration that the opportunity presented itself to them to acquire one of Napa Valley's crown jewels, one of the most historic 50 plus year wineries, as you said, that started at the second renaissance of Napa Valley in the early 60s and 70s. And so the excitement of the moment was they were able to come to an agreement with their family, acquire their property, and then have the aspiration to take the portfolio of wines that Moët Hennessy represent to a higher level.
Well, since the acquisition, have the new owners approached wine production differently?
Yes, but in the vineyard, in the vineyard, and I think that when any owner, when anybody says that the aspiration is to produce wines of the highest quality and to elevate the quality of the wines that are being made, and I think that every winery, no matter how well received the wines or how high the quality is, every winery should be aspiring to produce higher quality wines. And that begins in the vineyards. So we have been looking closely at our 8 vineyards in Napa Valley and the ones in Sonoma as well. And we are looking to implement a new approach to farming grapes, which is a new and exciting thing that a lot of wineries are talking about. We refer to it as agroecology, which is the term used in France, but the common term being used here in the United States is regenerative farming. And indeed, we're looking at our vineyard holdings and deciding where and how we believe we can produce grapes of the very highest quality by integrating into this new approach to farming.
David, you joined Joseph Phelps Vineyards as chairman in 2023. You have an illustrious career in luxury wine spanning over 20 years and bring a wealth of experience and expertise to lead the Maison. Where do you see the opportunity to build on this legacy brand and elevate its position in the marketplace?
Well, I thank you for that question. Thank you for the comments. This just ties to the answer that I think I just gave, which is it's relatively rare and unique and exciting when a company such as LVMH and Moët Hennessy acquires such a crown jewel as Joseph Phelps, and then determines and commits themselves to bringing the resources and the focus and the energy to raise this to the highest levels of quality possible within Napa Valley, and then to have the resources to share that wine on a global basis. And there is exciting potential with the winery, even such as Joseph Phelps, that is well regarded for the quality, well regarded for the wines and the history. But it's a great challenge in Napa Valley these days for wineries that are 30, 40, or 50 years old. And the challenge is that if they rest on their laurels too much, if they're too content with the history and the sales and everything they've achieved, they can be passed by a new wine. There's so many good wineries in Napa Valley, and
Right.
there's so many new labels. And so the energy that's required in some cases to take a winery that's been around for 50 years and compete and earn that again and gain recognition for what they're doing, what we're doing, is an exciting challenge. And those are the kind of challenges that I love. So I'm thrilled to be here to be part of it.
At the beginning of the year, Silicon Valley Bank released its annual State of the U.S. Wine Industry report that provides recaps, projections, and analysis, which many in the industry lean on to understand trends. This year's edition again acknowledged what is already known in the industry. Growth in the wine sector has plateaued at around zero. The reasons are numerous. Young drinkers are drinking less and have gravitated toward low or no alcohol and other alternative beverages. Some parts of the U.S. region are overplanted and therefore production exceeds demand. What are your thoughts on the state of the wine industry, and how do you feel it needs to evolve to right set things?
There isn't, unfortunately, an easy answer or a silver bullet, or we all have to do this or do that. There's a lot of reflection going on. It's a very complicated time. Our industry, and I think of California in particular, seems to go through, challenging times every 10 or 15 years, whether it's a recession or some other impact, and it tends to rebalance the industry. Less competitive wine producers to choose to move out of the industry, and we rebalance supply. And thinking back to $2 Chuck way back in the day,
Mhm.
there's those kind of cyclical challenges. But I do think, and this is reminiscent to me, not just of $2 Chuck, but of the late 1980s, when there was a sort of anti-alcohol, neo-prohibitionist movement tendency. And the wine business had to present and justify why wine mattered, why wine was important in our daily lives, what role it plays. And I think that opportunity is presenting itself again. I don't think if we focus on trade issues or consumer issues, the question that we want to share is that why does wine matter? What is the purpose behind it?
Mhm.
One of the things that I've returned to, and anyone can do this, if one Googles Mondavi defense,
Yeah.
it dates from the late 1980s, and Robert Mondavi and his family and company created then a brief statement, a paragraph on why wine was important socially, historically, culturally, at the table. Um, and I think we can return to that and remember that it's not how important we think we are or how much detail we have or how fancy we think we are. It's sharing the passion of sitting at a table with friends and family, a good piece of bread, some nice cheese, and a glass of wine, and realizing that that's the role that wine could play to bring people together. Since COVID, when I travel around, I mentioned to people that since COVID, we feel disconnected, and people nod their heads.
Mhm.
And I don't know anything that reconnects people as well as does a glass of wine. It can be a very fancy, very elegant, very special wine, or it can be a table wine. It's a matter of the slowing down and reconnecting with the basics. And I think that's our challenge, is to reconnect with people, um, ground ourselves again on the the importance of sharing food and telling stories.
I want to talk a little bit about climate change. In Napa Valley, Cabernet Sauvignon is king. It accounts for about 40% of Napa's total production. The bold red wine has made the region world famous, with some bottles retailing at hundreds of dollars. But increasingly, severe heat waves have been taking a toll on the grape variety, especially in late summer during ripening. As temperatures keep rising, the wine industry is slowly confronting a future where Napa may not be the prime Cabernet region it once was. And in the face of climate change, wineries around the world are innovating. We're seeing new technology being installed to keep the grapes cool during heat spells. A handful of wineries are experimenting with new grapes. How is Joseph Phelps Vineyards adapting to climate change?
Yeah. Well, first of all, the image, I mean, this is the principal issue for winemakers around the world. And winemakers have been and will always be the sort of the canary in the coal mine, because we depend not only on sort of the average temperature of the year, but the timing of the temperature and the amount of rainfall and when it falls. And the curiosity of the experience isn't that everybody is just getting hotter every year and it's more sun and hotter, and how are we going to deal with it? It's more the variability. In
Mhm.
23, we had one of the coldest, wettest, longest harvests in recent memory. And so a real challenge is climate variation and climate change. It is affecting us. We see it, we know it. But it's not so simple as simply saying we're all going to just keep getting hotter. The climate models are built on 500, 1,000 plus years of history, of data. And so there's climate trends, and then there's weather, and weather is variable. So we need to look at all of those kind of issues with, if you can, when people replant vineyards, there are different reasons for replanting vineyards, and the selection of the rootstock and clone in terms of adapting to warmer temperature is one decision people can make. The way people manage their canopies, the pruning, irrigation practices, all of those come into play and need to be considered and thought through. We're committed and believe deeply that again, there's this new approach to farming, which would take much more time than we have on this podcast
Mhm.
to talk about the approach to agroecology and um, focusing on creating healthy living soil, which creates healthier vines, which produces more efficient photosynthesis of the vines through the growing season, is one of the best approaches to make the vine able to resist climate variation. And it's a very important and very interesting discussion. More and more people are thinking about how vines, soil, and soils interact to create vines that, as I just said, are healthier, more resistant to virus and health pressures, and more able to respond to climate variation that we will see. So this is what we're doing. We're looking at all of the above.
So, do you think it's possible climate change or climate variation could force you to adjust what you grow and sell? More red blends and heat tolerant varieties?
You couldn't say no to that. I think that the scope and time of what we expect isn't going to change Napa from being one of the great Cabernet producers in our lifetimes and the times coming. But we will have to respond to extreme variations. 22 was a hot year, 23 was a cold year. And Insignia, as an example, is a blend of different varietals. That blend percentage will vary according to the growing conditions and heat. And certainly, we will see and can see different offerings from different wineries given changing conditions. But I'm quite confident that Napa will remain as one of the world's finest Cabernet producers.
Every industry is in the midst of figuring out the benefits and drawbacks of using artificial intelligence. In wine, its potential application is vast, from vineyard management to winemaking to marketing. AI's impact can be felt at every level of the wine trade, influencing the way it's grown, made, bought, sold, and consumed. Joseph Phelps himself was known as an innovative Napa Valley producer. How have you implemented AI to manage vineyards and enhance the winemaking process?
Yeah, it's another great question because it's a very hot topic. People are discussing it. I know some brilliant wine consultants and marketers who have leaned into the meta world and AI, and I know companies that have created AI sommeliers. Um, and I'm quite confident that AI will impact our business along with every other business in profound ways as we go forward. That being said, we're not focused on being leading edge in that area. Joe was visionary and innovative, and we're looking to be visionary and innovative in the vineyard. I think that I was thinking about this, and I think that I don't want AI to replace the human role of intuition and experience.
Hmm.
Thinking about Google Maps. Google Maps is coming. It's not AI, at least not yet. Google Maps helps us get from point A to point B very well. I use it all the time. But I find sometimes that I don't know how I got to the place. And I think that by using Google Maps, I'm less capable, perhaps, of navigating myself through places. I just listen to what Siri tells me to do and I do it. And I don't want AI to do that for me with wines. I don't want to be able to go in and tell me what to drink. I think that the experience, the exchange, the personal connection um, is essential to the human experience of wine. Doesn't mean that AI won't provide information, and doesn't mean that we won't be integrating internet technologies into it. But I find myself to be more interested in humans connecting around a table and sharing stories than AI at this point.
Wine tourism has been steadily gaining popularity in recent years, reshaping global travel and tasting experiences for wine enthusiasts around the world. This trend is driven by a growing interest in wine culture as well as an increasing desire for unique and authentic travel experiences. Naturally, Napa Valley is a leading wine tourism destination. I know Phelps offers a variety of wine tasting and culinary experiences for guests. How is Phelps making those experiences memorable for guests and keeping them emotionally engaged with the brand's narrative?
Yeah, I think this is a super important question, and a word you used in there, which I think is one that merits its own discussion and drilling down, which is this question of authentic
Hmm.
and authenticity. It's one of those words for me a little bit like luxury, that when you say it, you immediately think you know what it means, but then when you try and pinpoint it or say, how do I create something that's authentic? It gets a little slippery and a little harder. And that said, I think it's critical that the wine industry, wine producers indeed produce authentic wines. Um, what 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 we sense is that wine consumers and young people in general are looking less these days to acquire and to obtain and to purchase things, and looking more, as you said, to have experiences, to get engaged and get involved. And the image that I have with that is that folks want to get their hands dirty. They want to feel like they want to be, not feel like, but they want to be part of the action, part of the process. They want to get engaged and involved in the passion of growing, the passion of farming, the passion of cooking. Rather than have people cook for you and enjoy the meal, people want to cook themselves these days. They want to go into the kitchen and make bread. It's so reassuring when you make the bread. There's this prideful, visceral, deep connection to the food rather than having someone do it for you. So when folks come to Phelps, uh, we want to help them come out and get into the garden, get into the
Mm.
farm, get into the process of smelling and tasting and feeling and experiencing. And those experiences are the ones that people love to share on social media. Look what I did. Look where I was. Look how this, and so it's an experience of value, has to resonate with their values. Environmental issues and being connected to nature matters. So when folks come here, we'll go foraging for mushrooms, and we'll take them out into the vineyard and the garden, and we'll get their hands dirty. And we think that that's the most emotional way to create a lasting connection.
Are you seeing a shift to younger and more diverse guests? I mean, when you think about Napa's core visitors, that you think older luxury travelers. Are you seeing a shift?
To be honest, I don't have the numbers in front of me. There's other folks that track those numbers very well. The younger question, I've seen younger people coming through Napa Valley forever, for decades, and we continue to see younger people come here. I think the question is how we speak to them and how we connect to them. I also speak about the boomers, of which I'm part of that happy family. The boomers are starting to term out, as it were. So
Mhm.
we're seeing a few fewer boomers, but we still see some of my friends, people of my age, coming through, and I think the trick is connecting to boomers and young people in ways that, again, connect to their values, and they're not always the exact same. But I don't know that we have more younger people, but we certainly continue to have younger people coming.
You were talking about regenerative agriculture, and the Phelps Winery is one of the leaders when it comes to regenerative agriculture, which is essentially what it sounds like, farming grapes in a way that regenerates soil health. You touched upon it a little bit before, but could you share the winery's experience with the regenerative farming practices?
Well, thank you for saying that we're at the leading edge of it. We want to be there, but we're also at the very beginning of the process. And frankly, so is everybody else. There are a small number of wineries in the world that have been doing this for a number of years. Um, but it's an interesting discussion because not everyone has the same definition of regenerative farming. And I fear that it's possible that it can be greenwashed, so that people say, I'm doing regenerative farming, and that would be, I think, unfortunate for the importance of this approach. And this approach to us is moving away from monocultures and moving towards polyculture, and even more broadly, the way that we globally farm and agriculture starts with the philosophy that we can manipulate and control nature to make it do what we want it to do. That is, we go into a parcel, we pull all the trees out, all the plants out, we create bare soil, we plant corn, just to use corn, we plant corn, and then we fertilize it. As it grows, nature abhors monoculture, so they send in weeds. We don't like weeds, so we have to take them out either by hand or by Roundup. And then a little bug will fly in, a little insect will fly in. That insect may be carrying a virus, so we have to get that out. So basically, the way we farm globally is fighting against nature, keeping it out, and then trying to make it do what we want it to do in the parcel. That's how we farm globally. And that approach is not working. We're losing that fight against nature. More weeds, more plants are Roundup resistant. We have more viruses than ever before. Ever since COVID, we all know what viruses are about. So regenerative farming, I'm sorry, this is a little long.
That's okay.
Regenerative farming takes the approach of we have to bring back the natural biodiversity of nature and let the ecosystem function as it does normally. We don't have to fertilize our forests. They do fine on their own because the ecosystem is working in its entirety. The plants, the soil, the mushrooms in the soil, the fungus in the soil all work together to make the ecosystem vibrant and sustainable and healthy. That's what we have to do. So we can do it in a number of different ways depending on where you are and what vineyards you have and all those kind of things. But as we replant our vineyards here at Joseph Phelps, as we bring the vines back in, we will bring it in with a diversity of plants. We will bring a diversity of plants into and around the vineyard parcels to create a polyculture. We'll keep the soil covered at all times because bare soil gets oxidized and cooked, and the bacteria die. And then once the soil is really active with bacteria, fungal bacteria, and a multiplicity of plants growing, we believe that that healthy soil will then drive the vines to have much longer lives, to have a more efficient photosynthetic cycle, produce grapes of higher quality. It's a long-term process, and it starts with an acceptance of the philosophical perspective, because it's not changing two or three things. It's like it's not let's stop doing this, or let's do more of that, or let's add this to the vineyard. It rethinks our human relationship with nature, and that is super positive. That's super interesting.
I want to talk about tariffs. The wine industry has been caught in the crossfire of a trade war. A couple of months ago, Canada united to boycott American wines, taking all U.S.-made wine and alcohol off its liquor and wine store shelves and out of restaurants across the country as an aggressive retaliatory response. Canada is the top buyer of U.S. wine. How has Joseph Phelps Vineyards felt the impact of these tariffs?
That's the worst. It's just absolutely the worst. There's zero. Don't get me started, please. I went through, but you mentioned Canada. I went through last November to a fairly fast trip. I went to Montreal, Toronto, Calgary, and Vancouver in 1 week. Met with everybody, and we were just getting so excited about this new vision for Joseph Phelps, where we were taking the wines, what we were doing, the current wines we're offering, and we were expecting to welcome at our winery here this spring some important buyers from Montreal and from Toronto, and we were really just teed up to do this. And of course, it's come to a dead halt, to stand still. I sent an email to our friends in Toronto, and I apologized on behalf of what I hope is the majority of Americans.
Yeah.
And he replied back and I said, please, you have a rain check. The minute we're through this, we would look forward to bringing you back. His response to me was that he agreed wholly, and he feared that this would be generational, the anti-Americanism. That's what he fears. We'll see. We'll see. But it is a nonsense. And, the wine industry almost everybody talks about managing for the long term, and because vineyards are long-term investments and sort of the nature. But when times are good and easy and business is healthy, it's easy to talk about the long term because things are good. The test comes when times are hard, and times are hard now. And so this is, for us all, a test of how well we can manage for the long term. In the long term, we'll be friends with Canada again. In the long term, we'll be selling wine there again. But for the moment, tariffs are making the world very difficult.
Do you think it will impact the summer tourist season in Napa?
Gosh, I hope not. But certainly it's possible. I hear, read, and in the world of social media posting, a lot of folks are saying we're not coming to America anytime soon. I think those are real issues and real
Yeah.
concerns.
What could we look forward to from Joseph Phelps Vineyards in the next 12 months?
We couldn't be more excited, and that's not a hyperbole. We're really excited about the 2023 harvest. It was one of it's considered by most people in the valley to be a truly exceptional vintage. But it was really hard. As I said, it was cold and wet and long, and it took patience and precision. And it was really not an easy year. But the wines that we produced have incredible complexity and beautiful structure, all the things you look for in a young wine that is appealing and enjoyable when it's young, but will have the capacity to age for a good long period of time. So we're nurturing the 22 vintage, which in its own right has, I sort of skipped over that because we'll be releasing the 22 vintage this fall. 22 had in the middle of harvest a week of extreme temperatures, back to our earlier discussion. But if your vineyards were healthy and you picked the grapes at the right time, you could make a wine of really nice structure and quality. So the 22s are exciting, the 23s are exceptional, and we're excited about bringing those to our friends and our consumers, our patrons. If you come today or tomorrow or for the next couple of months to our home ranch, the home ranch is the original winery that Joe built in 1973. We have a new winery that where we're making our wine in since 2000. But when you come to the home ranch and you look out on our vineyards, you'll see the vineyard parcel in front bare, and we've pulled those vines out. This is the start of our work towards replanting in an agroecological and regenerative way. So we're excited to share the wines we're making because we're really proud of them. And we think they're very good wines, and we love telling people about where we're going.
So, David, my final question is the luxury item question, which I ask all my guests. So, if you were stranded on a deserted island and you could only have one single luxury item with you on that deserted island, what would the luxury item be? It can't be any form of air or water transportation to get you off that island or anything that requires mobile service so you can call somebody to get you off that island. You're stuck on this island. What would that one single luxury item you would like to have with you?
So, an iPhone doesn't work. No, and usually the question that comes is, what wine do you want to have? And
That's too easy.
It's a little too easy. But as a luxury item, I need a glass of wine and a great crispy baguette, and a little bit of brie, good brie.
Okay, well, that's three things, but I'll count that as one. I'll let you slide on this one.
All right.
David Pearson, President and Executive Chairman at Joseph Phelps Vineyards. Thank you so much for joining me on The Luxury Item.
Scott, thank you. It's been a pleasure.
That's it for this episode of the Luxury Item Podcast. Thank you so much for listening. If you found this useful and entertaining, I would be really grateful if you can share it with a friend or colleague. I would love it if you subscribe so you never miss an episode. And while you're there, be sure to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. It really helps other listeners find us. The Luxury Item Podcast is a production of Silvertone Consulting. I'm your host, Scott Kerr. Until next time.